begin. So just hang on there. We'll be starting in about 2 minutes. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. We're going to get started. Hopefully everyone can hear us. If you're having any audio issues, but you're seeing the captions, please make sure to let us know in the questions section. You can type it in. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Save SCOTUS, What's at Stake for Women and What State Advocates Can Do. My name is Sarah Medeiros, and I'm the Communications and External Affairs Assistant here at the National Women's Law Center. I just want to give you a few technical notes before we begin. All attendee lines will be on mute during today's webinar until the Q&A section. We'll be taking questions after our experts are finished with the main presentation, and we encourage you to submit questions throughout the webinar. You can submit a question by typing it using the GoToWebinar chat window visible inside your GoToWebinar dashboard, which is usually found on the right side of your screen. This webinar will have live captioning throughout, which you should be able to see now at the bottom of your screen below the presentation slides. PDFs of the slides are available to you now as a handout through the GoToWebinar system. Lastly, the webinar is being recorded. As a registrant and an attendee, you'll receive links to the recording of the presentation as well as the slides themselves within the next few days. At this time, I'd like to turn the floor over to Andrea Johnson, Senior Counsel for State Policy here at the National Women's Law Center.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for this webinar on what's at stake in this SCOTUS fight and what state advocates can do. As you can imagine, it has been quite a whirlwind here the last few weeks since Justice Kennedy announced his retirement, because so much is at stake for women and girls with this open seat on the Supreme Court. I believe many of you are familiar with the National Women's Law Center, but for those who aren't, the Law Center has been working for over 45 years to advance and protect women's and girls' equality and opportunity. We work through the courts and through local, state, and federal legislatures and agencies to champion policies and laws that help women and girls achieve their full potential throughout their lives. That means at school, at home, and at work. And as many of you know, we work with state and local advocates like yourselves, and also with state and local legislators across the country on a range of issues that affect women and girls' lives, from equal pay to sexual harassment, from reproductive health care, to ensuring girls of color aren't pushed out of schools, to affordable childcare and income support. So a whole range of issues. And we provide drafting assistance on bills, talking points, state-specific data, and legal research. But today, we're so glad that so many of you are able to join us to learn more about how we can work together, not just to help women and girls in your state, but really the whole country by activating in every state and every city to save SCOTUS. We are going to hear first today from my colleague Rachel Easter, who is counsel on our reproductive rights and health team, and she's also leading the charge in our judges' work. And she'll let us know what is at stake with the SCOTUS fight and what the overall strategy is for fighting to save SCOTUS. And then you will hear from my colleague Jenilyn Soto, who is Senior Manager for Campaigns and Digital Strategies, and she will go over how state advocates and state legislators can engage in this fight and what resources are available to help you engage. And then after that, we will open it up to questions from folks. So with that, I'm turning it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Andrea. As you said, my name is Rachel Easter. I'm counsel on the strategy and policy and reproductive health teams here at the Law Center. And in the 45 years that we have been around, we can say that the stakes for women and girls have never been higher than they are with this Supreme Court fight. The court's decisions have long shaped and given meaning to many of our fundamental constitutional rights and legal protections, from the right to make personal decisions about reproductive health, to our healthcare coverage, to our right to equal opportunities in the workplace and schools. But this Supreme Court vacancy puts all of that at risk, because the balance of the court could turn against women's constitutional rights if Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed. There are a number of cases working their way through the courts that could be heard by the Supreme Court in the next few years. So we know that women's access to health care, including their reproductive health care, and their opportunities at work and school are threatened. And this is not just a hypothetical threat. For example, there are a number of abortion-related cases in the pipeline to the Supreme Court. This is no accident. Anti-abortion advocates have been waiting for this opportunity for years, having states pass extreme unconstitutional laws that will hopefully make their way up to the court. And the Supreme Court could use these to gut or overturn Roe v. Wade. If Roe were overturned, at least 20 states are poised to seek immediately to ban abortion. And an anti-abortion Congress and president, as we currently have, could also ban abortion nationwide. And gutting or undermining Roe v. Wade could open the door to more attacks on birth control access as well. Cases about whether women lose access to birth control because of things the Trump administration is doing, their employers' religious beliefs, or a handful of other restrictions being passed by those in states who are opposed to birth control are currently working their way through the courts. The Supreme Court could also continue the assault on the Affordable Care Act. Those who want to overturn the ACA continue to bring court challenges. One that many of you have likely heard of is working its way through the courts, brought by Texas and other states who argue the law is invalid and particularly target the ACA's critical protections for individuals with pre-existing conditions. If this case works its way to a Supreme Court with Brett Kavanaugh on it, that court would have the opportunity to undermine or completely get rid of the ACA. And opportunities for women and girls at school and work are also at stake. For years, corporations have been plotting to undermine workers' protections in the courts. The next Supreme Court justice will decide cases critical to the future of working women and their families. For example, people who face workplace harassment and other forms of discrimination need to be able to hold their harassers accountable, including in the courts. And the Supreme Court often weighs in on how courts actually approach these claims and what hurdles women have to overcome to get into court and then to prove that they were harassed. In addition, the Supreme Court will likely soon weigh in on whether the federal law's ban on sex discrimination in the workplace prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. In fact, we know that a group opposed to LGBTQ rights just asked the Supreme Court yesterday to review a case with this very question. This could threaten the opportunities for LGBTQ individuals to have equal opportunity in the workplace and schools, and generally threaten anti-discrimination protections for women and LGBTQ folks. And in schools, we know that voices opposed to civil rights have schemed for years to undo laws that protect girls, women, students with disabilities, LGBTQ students, and other students of color. For example, Title IX requires that schools treat survivors fairly and address sexual violence before it becomes an issue, but the Trump administration and others are trying to undermine those protections. And the Supreme Court can make it harder to fight sexual harassment in school, threatening all students. And anti-LGBTQ groups have filed transphobic lawsuits demanding that schools police bathrooms. These lawsuits would out trans students, deny access to facilities that match their gender identity, and okay policing based on sex stereotypes. The Supreme Court could decide whether all children have the right to be treated with respect in schools. So now that I have given you that very depressing litany of the many issues that are at stake, I want to talk about Brett Kavanaugh. But before we even do that, we need to remember how Trump picked his nominee. So Trump has repeatedly promised to nominate someone committed to overturning Roe v. Wade, as we will show you in this video here, if we can get it to play.
will happen. And that'll happen automatically, in my opinion, because if we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's really what's going to be had. That will happen. And that'll happen automatically, in my opinion, because I am putting pro-life justices on the court.
We all need to take Trump at his word. He repeatedly promised this, and he also promised to nominate someone who would dismantle the Affordable Care Act. Using this litmus test, he worked with extreme conservative groups to put together a short list, and he picked from that list. Kavanaugh clearly passed those tests with flying colors in order to become the nominee. So who is Brett Kavanaugh? Well, Brett Kavanaugh, before he became a judge, he worked on the Ken Starr investigation during the Clinton administration. He then was involved in Bush v. Gore, the Supreme Court case that put George W. Bush in the White House. And then in 2000, he worked in the Bush administration after that. And then in 2006, he was confirmed to the D.C. Circuit, where he's been a judge for the past 12 years and spent much of that time undermining our constitutional rights. Judge Kavanaugh has voted to allow religious beliefs to override an individual's rights to insurance coverage of birth control. He issued a ruling to allow the government to continue blocking Jane Doe, a young immigrant woman, from accessing abortion care. And it's worth noting here that in his opinion, he adopted the extremist language from conservatives, using phrases like abortion on demand to describe her situation. He has expressed contempt for the ACA in 2 different cases that came before him, and including in a speech he gave just weeks before he landed on the short list, which doesn't feel like a coincidence. In employment discriminations, Judge Kavanaugh has sided against employees time and time again. He has read anti-discrimination protections very narrowly, and time again has deferred to employers' arguments for why they treated that worker differently. And he has shown a willingness to restrict students' rights in schools, particularly the rights of students with disabilities. His records show that all the issues we talked about, what's at stake, really are under threat, and that we must keep this man off the Supreme Court bench. So now I want to give a little bit of background on what the confirmation process is for getting someone on the bench. After somebody is named, as Kavanaugh was on July 9th, we go into the pre-hearing phase. That's what we're in right now. And 2 key things typically happen during that pre-hearing phase. Senators do interviews with the nominee. So they'll sit down one-on-one with Judge Kavanaugh and try and really get a better sense of his judicial philosophy, understand what kind of a nominee he would be. And we really need to push senators to ask probing questions during that interview. This isn't a press opportunity. This is an opportunity to find out how this nominee would affect their constituents' rights. As of now, the only Democrats that have agreed to meet with him are Senator Manchin and Senator Heitkamp. The rest are demanding that they see all of Kavanaugh's documents from his record, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And then this is also a period when the Senate Judiciary Committee sends out a questionnaire to the nominee, and they send it back with all of their law review articles, all their public speeches, all of those things that they have ever given. We actually got Kavanaugh's back late on Friday night, early Saturday morning, and it's more than 6,000 pages long, including, 50 speeches he gave to the Federalist Society, and a host of books and other things that he has written. So folks are digging into those now. So as I alluded to a moment ago, one of the big things that is happening during this pre-hearing process is a push to see all of Kavanaugh's documents. Because of the years he spent working for the Ken Starr investigation and for the Bush White House, many of his records are not public-facing. And so senators are demanding that we see those to really understand what kind of a nominee Kavanaugh would be. And this is what typically happens. For example, during the Kagan administration, or during the Kagan confirmation fight, there was a bipartisan agreement to get all of her records. And so folks saw everything that they possibly could from her time during the Clinton White House, including her emails. We need to see these because we want to know how involved was Kavanaugh in some of the things the Bush administration did to trample many of our critical rights. And what was his role during the Ken Starr investigation, which we now know, looking back, was rather shaming of the women involved in the process. Moreover, during this pre-hearing phase, this is our opportunity to control the narrative and make sure that folks know how awful Kavanaugh really is and how important this fight is. So we need to take advantage of it. And in particular, we need to take advantage of the August recess, which is the week of August 6th, when senators will be back in their home states, and we need to turn folks out and let them know how important this fight really is. So after this pre-hearing phase, we'll have the hearing, which is when the Senate Judiciary Committee has an opportunity to ask the nominee several questions. It typically lasts 3 to 4 days. And then there's testimony from outside witnesses, including during the Gorsuch fight, Fatima Goss-Graves of the National Women's Law Center testified, as did Amy Hagstrom-Miller from Whole Woman's Health. So there's not really a great idea on what the timing will be, because I know that's probably a burning question many of you have. We know that Republicans in the Senate have made clear they want to rush this nomination as fast as possible, but the other side is holding firm that we need to see all the documents we just talked about. That being said, there is speculation that hearing will be the week after Labor Day, so important to keep that in mind. After the hearing, the committee will vote, and immediately the confirmation will move to the Senate floor, where the entire Senate has the opportunity to weigh in. This only lasts a few days in many circumstances, which is why taking advantage of this pre-hearing phase and making noise now is so important, because once we get to the hearing, everything moves really quickly. And then we have the final vote. The final vote means that we only need they only need 51 votes to confirm Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. So that means we need to hold every single Democrat and flip at least one Republican to a no vote. They can't abstain, they have to vote no for Kavanaugh to be defeated. We know that in the Neil Gorsuch fight, that Senator Manchin of West Virginia, Senator Donnelly of Indiana, and Senator Heitkamp of North Dakota voted for Neil Gorsuch. We also know that Senators Murkowski and Collins are pro-choice, although they are Republicans, and they've expressed concerns about any nominee that would overturn Roe v. Wade. So these are some of the key senators we have our eye on, but this really is a 50-state fight. So what is this fight going to look like? At the federal level, we're going to fight every single step of this process. Right now, both the Hill and advocacy groups are focused on healthcare and reproductive rights. The Hill is committed to highlighting the potential threats in these areas every single week. And that's because support for Roe is at an all-time high. 71% of Americans believe that it should not be overturned. And we know that healthcare is a winning issue, as we know from last summer with the ADA repeal fight. But the Hill and federal groups and all of you also need to lift up the many issues that are at stake with Brett Kavanaugh's potential nomination. The Hill is planning to highlight the potential impact on 2 different issues each week. For example, it's environmental and voting rights. So we want you to know that if you are a group, you don't work on abortion access or healthcare, there is a place for you in this fight, and we need to hear from you too, because we know that everything all of us care about, quite frankly, is at stake. But I also want to note that we can win. A poll just released said that only 40% of Americans think that Brett Kavanaugh should be confirmed. Compared to the same point during the confirmation fight for Gorsuch, that's 10 points fewer. We also know how to win, because we did it before with the Affordable Care Act repeal, which is why I have that picture here. People understood that lives were on the line with that fight, and we need to make them understand that lives are on the line here too. And we need you to win this fight. We need state advocates to put pressure on your senators, and we encourage you to use every tool in your toolbox to do so. Send your supporters to town hall events, score the vote, get loud on social media, have folks line the Capitol building, with their bodies if that's your sort of thing. And I also want to note again that this is bigger than the swing states. We need all 50 states engaged here. If you're in California and you feel confident your senators will vote the right way, or you're in a red state and you know they won't, we still need your help. When we think about replicating the ACA fight, the number one most important thing was making noise. We need to control and hold the narrative, because we don't want the media writing about how much Kavanaugh likes dogs, like they did with Neil Gorsuch. We need them writing about how awful his record is. We need them writing about how the Senate switchboard is broken because so many people are calling their senators because this issue is so direly important to people across this country. And we need folks marching in the streets. So before I turn it over to Jenna Lynn, I just want to encourage all of you to contact us if you have any questions beyond this webinar, but also let us know if we can help you with talking points, with social media, with fact sheets, anything we can do to help you plug in on this fight. The National Women's Law Center is here for you. And if you want more details on sort of what the Hill strategy is and what's going on at the federal level, please don't hesitate to reach out. We will do anything we can to support you as you get engaged. Thanks so much, and I'll turn it over to Jenna Lynn.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Hi, everyone. This is Jenna Lynn Soto. I am the Senior Manager for Campaign and Digital Strategies here at the National Women's Law Center. And if you weren't already inspired and fired up by Rachel and her layout of everything that's at stake and how you can plug in, I'm here to give you some ideas about how you can best plug in digitally, field, and in terms of strategic advocacy. So let's start with digital engagement and organizing. And so the ultimate goal is to ensure that there is noise 24/7 coming from every single sector, highlighting all of the voices of our communities. One of the primary ways that we can drive the noise is through social media engagement. And so there are various tools which are listed here. So you've got emails and action alerts, you've got social media leveraging followers on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. This can happen locally across the nation. It's happening every day. In fact, it's happening right now with Twitter storms, Facebook events and ads, targeted ads, Facebook Lives. You want to have a conversation across your platforms with key members in your states and your districts, and shareable graphics. There are also going to be some digital actions happening the week of August 20th, where that entire week the women's community will have a week of action, which I'll get into some more during one of the later slides with field engagement. I know that for some folks it's going to seem incredibly basic, but it's just good to remind ourselves of all the different tools in our toolbox, regardless of how sophisticated your campaign or digital strategy, internal digital strategy teams might be. And every little bit helps, whether that's writing emails to your lists across the country, or it is tweeting out shareable graphics online, uplifting the message of exactly what's at stake for women and our communities across the country. As you might have seen earlier, we are definitely a shop that believes in graphics. One of the main reasons I've given these three examples is that they have a very high click rate. Why do we want a high click rate? It's one of the best ways to drive action, get the message across, and ensure engagement from folks who might not necessarily be able to make it out to the state capitol steps or to the senator's district office. But this is a way that you can maintain engagement from your supporters, from folks you're connected with online, whether it is a simple block quote text or a GIF. It's a way to embed actions, which is often what we do here at the National Women's Law Center. Everything that you do online should drive not only the top tier messages, but also driving an action, whether that's calling the Capitol switchboard or that is sending emails to your senators. For our field advocacy, which again is a really key way to amplify the noise, it's wonderful when we can visualize exactly how many people are fired up about ensuring that Kavanaugh is not confirmed. Some examples are in having a silent protest in front of your senator's district office, or that is mobilizing all of your members to wear red handmaiden hoods and stand there silently and calling them and getting them to ask the questions that we need asked during these meetings, organizing press conferences, holding town halls. If your senator isn't having a town hall, you can certainly organize one within the district and get folks to uplift the questions that we really need asked. Petition deliveries, demanding that they ask certain questions and getting signatures of constituents in front of them to their offices. Pop-up teach-ins and community education workshops about breaking down why Kavanaugh is such a problematic appointee nomination. And then here's a fun one. Though several of the primaries have already ended, the voter registration for the general elections in November are still open. So have some hashtag SCOTUS voter registration drives in your districts to let them know that we will hold them accountable. Here are some very specific engagement opportunities that we have on deck. A lot of stuff is still moving. People are still coming together on how best to strategically leverage resources, but the week of August 6th, there are a couple of actions you can plug into. Planned Parenthood is planning welcome back actions for in the states for senators, meeting them at train stations, at the airport with signs. The National Women's Law Center is organizing a digital day of abortion storytelling. And then the week of August 20th, which I referenced earlier, is the Women's Community Week of Action. Every day that week, there will be a theme and a very particular drive and ask to amplify the noise. On the 20th, the National Women's Law Center will be working with Advocates for Youth for an Abortion Storytelling Day. On the 23rd, the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum, or NAPAF, is organizing with fellow reproductive justice groups on a few actions. And then, as you see, there's still some things in the work for ACA Day, which the National Partnership for Women and Families is coordinating, a Women's Workers Day, and Women in Faith. And then August 26th, NARAL and MoveOn.org will be organizing a nationwide protest day. So those are just some opportunities that are already fomenting that you can plug into, that you can help drive supporters to. And if you want more information on that, we not only have our contact information listed at the end of the presentation, but we've also got a couple of plugins for you. Now, leveraging media, local media and national media is going to be particularly key. There are a couple of opportunities for folks. Some ideas would be, if you can't pitch your blogs, understandably, a lot of the turnaround is quite rapid, so op-ed pitching might be a little too high of a lift, but you can certainly leverage your organizational platforms, your personal platforms, and coordinate a blog carousel with partners in your particular region or state, or try and coordinate with us if that is something that you would like to do. There are LTEs as well, letters to the editor in local papers. I know that they are particularly key in local states. I know that Height Camp really listens, and story collection and sharing are a few other ideas. All right, so in terms of some resources, for information sharing, the National Women's Law Center has put together a state SCOTUS list. You can see that here. It will be very explicitly used for announcements and information dissemination. If you would like to sign up, you can email state-scotus-join@lists.nwlc.org. If you have already signed up, I've been told by our IT team that you should check your spam or junk filters because your membership confirmation might have been redirected there. For toolkit and sample messaging, then here at the Law Center, we're working on a few modular toolkits that we hope to be releasing soon, but the National Conference on Civil Rights is also pulling together some resources to be shared across the coalition. If you have not yet received any information or links to LCCR, please let us know, and we're happy to help disseminate. In terms of digital supports and PR supports, we encourage everyone everywhere to do what they can. If you are absolutely strapped, we do have a few resources here at the Law Center, as well as some consultant capacity. Please note that that is going to be on a case-by-case basis, but do let us know. Feel free to reach out, and we will help. We will respond, and we will help to the best of our abilities. And that's it for me. Andrea?
Great, thanks, gentlemen. So I just want to reiterate that we really urge you to join the state SCOTUS email to receive resources, messaging guidance, and talking points as they become available, as well as updates about nationwide actions that you can all plug into. And then again, urge you to reach out to us, notably me, Andrea Johnson, my email's up there, and Jenilyn, to let us know about actions that you are planning in your state so we can help amplify them, and to brainstorm with us or get connected to assistance with your actions. So I think with that, we're going to open up to questions. So maybe first, I don't know if we've figured out how to unmute everybody, but if folks are on the line or are listening in who are planning actions in the immediate future that you want to share with everybody, please write that in the question box on the webinar, and we'll make sure to read them off. And then, yes, so that will open up to questions. We have a few keyed up already, and I think Rachel has some answers. So we have a question about the source of the data indicating that only 40% of Americans are in favor of confirmation.
Yeah, so that actually, I got that in an email right before this webinar. I believe it's from a Quinnipiac poll that came out in the last few hours. I don't have a link to it, but we can potentially send, at the moment, but we can potentially send something out when we send out the recording.
Okay. And so there's another question about the faith background of Judge Kavanaugh.
He's Catholic. That's all I know.
There's the answer for that question. And then a question about send recommended abortion storytellers to us for 820.
Yes. So I don't think any of us in the room know all of the details, but I think worth sending to us. We are looking for a great group of storytellers to come in, but I just don't have the details on funding for flying folks in on me.
So folks can reach out to us about that.
Yeah, please reach out.
This is Jenilyn. It might be easiest to send me the emails for any recommendations, and I can funnel that over to a member of my team who's working directly with Advocates for Youth.
So we have another question about what is your bigger picture game plan given the next nominee will also be just as conservative, if not more?
Well, first, I wouldn't necessarily concede that that is the case, because if Kavanaugh is defeated because he's too conservative, one would hope that this administration would take the lesson that they need someone who is committed to upholding our constitutional rights. In addition, I think that a delay tactic is really important. We have an election coming up in November, and as a C3, I can't say too much about that, but things could change such that if there were a nomination fight that continued into January, the balance of the Senate could shift.
Okay. And somebody, I'm just going in order here, but somebody asked if we could repeat the sign up again. So I think that's the sign up for the state email. So that is state-SCOTUS, S-C-O-T-U-S, at lists, L-I-S-T-S, so lists plural. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, this is Jenilyn. That's the list that already exists. If you want to join, it's SCOTUS, S-C-O-T-U-S, join, J-O-I-N, at lists.nwlc.org.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And we'll definitely send that around in our follow-up email after this.
And you do have to, I want to repeat again, you do have to click and you get a confirmation email and you have to click that link. And I know for all of us, it went to our spam folder, so please keep your eye out for that.
Okay, and we have a few folks with announcements about different actions taking place. So 6, the State Innovation Exchange, per Kelly Baden, is coordinating a state legislator's sign-on letter via their Reproductive Freedom Leadership Council, which is a cohort of almost 300 legislators. So you can contact Kelly, Kelly, at stateinnovation.org for more information about that. Thanks so much, Kelly, for sharing that. And what else do we have for questions here? Have any of the folks at the Law Center spoken with senators about this issue? Please elaborate.
Yes, so this is Rachel again. We are in pretty constant contact with folks on the Hill, and that is informing a lot of our strategy. We speak to leadership, including folks from Senator Schumer's office and Senator Feinstein, who's the ranking member on Judiciary, multiple times a week. And those folks know that this is a fight for our lives and that they need to push harder on this than anything, but they definitely need our help to make sure that we are making noise and that we're making clear to some of those target senators how important this is to voters across the country. And I think they're really excited about hearing from constituents and particularly hearing from state advocates too, because you are such an important voice.
Great. And are there any other questions? Okay, one more. So we can take a few more. What is the longest delay that has occurred with a nominee that would make a delay until post-November realistic?
I don't know the exact number of days, but Garland, Obama's nominee, was nominated in the spring of 2016, and they delayed past the election, and Gorsuch wasn't named until nearly a year later. So that was a 10 or 11 month delay.
Any other questions from participants? And I'll just note that we've been providing some answers in the question and answer box, but somebody asked if this recording will be sent to everyone, and the answer is that, yep, it will be sent to everybody after the webinar. Okay, any other questions? Okay. Well, I know we threw a lot of information at you. The good news is that we will be sending along a number of resources after the call, links to different fact sheets that kind of lay out what's at stake and the judge's record, and those will be coming along soon. I see we have one more question. And yes, so we'll be sending around those resources after the call, and we are, along with many other organizations, constantly developing new resources, and we'll make sure to send those to you. So again, encourage everybody to join the State SCOTUS listserv, because that will be the best way to get those resources from us, so you have all the information and the talking points. And then again, folks in the states are really going to make the difference, just as happened with the ACA. I think that's such a good analogy to point to, of everybody just really hitting the streets and hitting the phone lines to reach out to the members of Congress and make an incredible amount of noise. And in every state, you know, not just the target states where there are persuadable senators, but every state we need to hear from folks, because that noise and controlling the narrative is so important. So we hope that you will consider these different actions that Jonalyn has laid out, and feel free to reach out to us to brainstorm and receive some assistance. We can connect you with assistance, and let us know when you're planning actions so that we can be sure to amplify them to make even more noise. So with that, I think we're good, and we will be sending those resources and the email again for how to join the listserv shortly after this call. Thank you so much, everybody.